Back on SportsCenter, Jaylen Brown back in the building, arriving for Game 4. He became the first player with 40 points on 70% shooting in a playoff game, and Celtics history, still all he cared about was those 7 turnovers. Malika Andrews and the Countdown crew have more on tonight's Game 4 in Boston. Hey, Malika.
Hello from Boston, L, where the lobster rolls are delicious and the Heat are hoping to keep cooking while the Celtics hope to bounce back. I'm Malika Andrews in TD Garden alongside Stephen A. Smith, Michael Wilbon, and Jalen Rose. But gentlemen, we need to start with senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski, because there has been so much news and injuries have been such a big part of this series. Woj, what can you tell us about the availability of Marcus Smart and Robert Williams for the Celtics?
Malika, there's much more optimism right now about the possibility of Robert Williams returning to the Celtics lineup tonight than Marcus Smart. Let's start with Robert Williams. You saw the impact that it had on Game 3 without him in the lineup with that bruised knee. Bam Adebayo had an outstanding game for the Heat, but listen, that left knee bone bruise that Williams has had, it's probably going to be troublesome for him through the rest of the playoffs. But I'm told it felt better getting some rest the last couple days, and there's optimism he's back in the lineup. But Marcus Smart, who left the game with the sprained ankle in Game 3, returned. There's still a lot of swelling there. He has undergone treatment, nearly around the clock through today. But less optimism that Boston's going to have Marcus Smart in their lineup tonight as they try to even this series against Miami.
Marcus Smart, the heart and soul of the Celtics defense. Woj, thank you so much coming back here on the desk. Really appreciate it, Adrian. But Stephen A., when you hear that Robert Williams may be back, we know Bam Adebayo, 31 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists in that Game 3, but no Marcus Smart. What percentage chance do you give the Celtics here?
I give him better than a 50% chance, but I'm still incredibly nervous because Marcus Smart is pivotal. He's the reigning Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. He's the spark plug for this team. Obviously, he gets them going. Now, we saw what they did in Game 2 without him. So to have somebody on your front court like a Robert Williams added to the equation and to still have Al Horford in there, you should be able to win this must-win game. Make no mistake about it. But is it easier without Marcus Smart? Hell no.
So much of this is going to depend on Miami's own health, Malika. I mean, we know Jimmy Butler plans to be out there, but how effective is he going to be? How close to 100% is he going to be? What's Kyle Lowry going to be like in this second game back from his hammy situation? I'm going to tell you, Stephen A., it makes me more nervous for them to be without Marcus Smart. I know the Celtics have been able to win a playoff game without Marcus Smart. They did that in the Milwaukee series, but Marcus Smart is the heart and soul, not just of that defense, but the whole team. And I'd say less than 50 if Marcus Smart is not going to be out there, even though they get Robert Williams back. That helps in the situation of Bam trying to guard him. But, man, without Marcus Smart, I think the Celtics are in a hole.
Definitely concerned because only 13 times in the history of the NBA playoffs has a team come back from 3-1. So the Celtics better approach this like a Game 7. Which means if he's not going, that means, A, he's really injured, and that's going to be a problem going forward. But getting Robert Williams back is really going to be helpful against Bam. Bam had his 3 high-scoring games this postseason. The 2 Embiid didn't play, and the 1 Robert Williams didn't play. It's important for them to have a Time Lord as an anchor.
Let me say this in response directly to Mike Wilbon. I get where you're coming from totally, but the flip side to it is that it ain't like the Miami Heat are walking around and they're not missed the infirmary themselves.
That's true. You're right.
They've got an abundance of injuries. You got Jimmy Butler, he's hobbled. You got Tyler Hero expected to be out. And so when you look at it from that perspective, they're certainly compromised, particularly and specifically in their backcourt. You
Lowry
take that
too.
and Lowry as well. So you take all of those things into consideration. Marcus Smart being out somewhat evens the scales, and then you take into account what we saw Jaylen Brown do last game when he wasn't turning the ball over. He did drop 40. You saw what Jason Tatum did in Game 2, and they are the cornerstones of this franchise. Without Marcus Smart, but everybody else in tow against an injury-depleted Miami Heat team, there's no excuse. The Boston Celtics better win this game.
Absolutely. Injury-depleted, no Tyler Hero tonight. That means they are going to need a big game from that man right there, Bam Adebayo. He averaged 8 points through the first 2 games of this series, had a monster bounce back in Game 3. Can he continue it tonight in Game 4? That is the question. Back to you, Elle.
Thanks so much, Malika. We'll also hear from both head coaches. They are set to speak. We'll bring that to you live. We're also not done talking about playoffs. On the other side, we'll tell you what's been the most impressive part of the Warriors jumping out to their 3-0 lead.
Meanwhile, out west, the Warriors sitting pretty, one win away from returning to the NBA Finals for the 6th time in 8 seasons after seizing a 3-0 series lead over the Mavs in the West Finals. Teams to take a 3-0 series lead have an all-time series record of 146-0. The Warriors continue to dominate in the third. Golden State, led by Steph Curry's 31-point effort. Curry has already scored 30-plus points 7 times this postseason. Michael Jordan and LeBron James are the only players with that many 30-point games in a single postseason at age 34 or older. MJ and LeBron both won Finals MVPs in the season they did this. JJ back here with us. The Warriors, are they still looking like clear frontrunners, Stephen?
I wouldn't use the word clear, but they're front runners as far as I'm concerned, because I think that when you look at the Boston Celtics, there's a level of inconsistency. That's about it. When I look at the Warriors, I think about experience. I think about shooting. I think about the way they share the selflessness, the way they share the basketball, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, right now, don't get me wrong, the Boston Celtics have made me nervous, very, very nervous, because when they amp up their defensive pressure, I mean, they are something to behold, and we know what they can do offensively when they get rolling. So, obviously, if this ends up being the Warriors versus the Celtics, I think it would be an incredible NBA Finals to look forward to. But right now, as nervous as I can be about it, I'm still holding on to the Warriors being that team to beat in the NBA.
Yeah, I have no problem with them being the front runners for the championship, either through Vegas or through prognosticators. I have no issue with that. I get it, but I look at each individual matchup in the playoffs, because matchups matter so much in the playoffs. And when I think about what the Warriors have done to the Mavericks, they've exposed that they don't have any rim protection. They've attacked Luka relentlessly, using his man as a screener. They're scoring about 1.16 points per possession on that. That's basically league equivalent of a top 5 offense in the NBA. When we talk about the 2 teams left in the Eastern Conference, the Heat and the Celtics, those problems that the Mavs had, they don't have those problems. They have rim protection. Both those teams inherently switch most of the stuff. Now, the Warriors on-ball switching is different, or their movement is different. So switching off-ball is different than switching on-ball, but they're used to switching. There's also, on both those teams, really no guys you can really target, specifically with the Celtics as well. Pritchard, obviously, in Game 1 against the Heat, was targeted in the fourth quarter by Jimmy Butler a number of times. But in their normal closing lineup, assuming they are healthy, there's no guys that you can just target as the guy being used as the screener. So I think about Bam. I think about Al Horford. The wing defenders of the Celtics, the wing defenders of the Heat. Like these are tough matchups. These are tough matchups for the Warriors. Whoever it is that comes out of the East is going to give them a great series. And I also think the teams in the East are a little more battle-tested this season. Obviously, the Warriors, their core group is very battle-tested. They are champions through and through. They are champions. But specifically with what Boston has had to go through, and if they do end up beating the Miami Heat, having to beat Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, having to beat Giannis and the Bucks, having to now beat this Heat team that's basically a mirror image of them, I just think it's going to be a very interesting and tough finals for the Warriors. And they're more than capable of winning, but in my eyes, they're not the front runner. They are not the front runner. They have a chance to win the championship, but I think the team in the East is a tough matchup for them.
Listen, I think that if the Warriors ended up meeting the Celtics in the finals, it's a pick'em series. That's how deep I think this goes, because of how Boston plays defense. And what I saw Boston do against them in that second game of Golden State in the regular season, albeit it was the regular season, I still pay attention to that. But also, I would say this to you. I don't consider Miami and Boston a mirror image of one another. I want to be very, very clear about that. I think that when you look at Boston,